Hey, what's up guys? John from the Lucky Needle, and today I'm here in the garage just tinkering around on this golf cart that we bought for the property. I really don't like how a lot of the wiring is kind of like rubbing on hard edges and things like that. So I'm going to show you guys some of the tricks that I've learned over the years about how to creatively use zip ties to prevent things from chafing and breaking. I typically call these isolation mounts. Isolation mounts is basically just a term for a type of mount to protect it from vibration and rubbing and chafing on things. So in this case, we're going to be using it on all the wires. What we're going to need, actually, first what we're going to need is obviously going to need zip ties. We're going to need just some rubber hose. This can be clear, this can be black, this can be pretty much any size that you want. And then just some type of cutters to cut the rubber hose, and then flush cuts. I strongly recommend flush cuts anytime you're working with zip ties, because if you just cut them off with dikes, it doesn't get it nice and flush, and it makes a really sharp edge. And anytime you're working on something with zip ties that aren't cut perfectly flush, you get cut up on your arms all over the place, and it's really annoying. So these are just a cheap version. They're like 16 bucks on Amazon. I'll put a link up for you guys, and I'll put a link up for all the other stuff we talk about in this too. All right, so the first little trick that I want to show you guys is, you see how this is the choke cable. It's resting right up on this sharp edge of the generator mount here. And I'm just going to show you a quick trick on how to, make this so that it's mounted solid, but it's not, the vibration isn't going to rub and tear this up. So you're going to cut yourself just a little piece of that rubber hose like this, right? And then we're just going to thread that all the way down to the end there. Now I'm going to run the zip tie through this hole, and then I'm going to run it back through the little piece of rubber hose that we cut. And I'm going to get that zip tie head pretty much all the way up against the rubber there. And now we'll take the zip tie and go around that cable there. And then we'll just connect it. Make sure that you don't have this twisted, so that it's not gonna tighten down and look funny. And then we'll just pull that tight. And as you're tightening it, make sure you kind of got it positioned where you want it. And we'll take our flush cuts and cut that nice and flush. I like to always kind of touch it with my finger, and you can see there's still a sharp little sharp edge, so that'll cut you right open pretty good. So I'll come back and make sure that's nice and flush right there. And now you can see that this is mounted nice and solid. Any vibration, it's not gonna cut into this. It's gonna cut into that rubber hose right there. All right, and then another nice little trick you can do on this golf cart. It's not a huge deal, but I like to do some isolation mounts sometimes to prevent wires from rubbing together, especially if you're working on something where safety is a real concern, like say an airplane or a race car. I try to, but I mostly did this just because it looks really nice. So you can make your wires really nice and tidy like this. So I don't really need to put another one of these here, but I'm just going to put one right here to show you guys how you actually do this. And you can actually do an infinite amount of these. You can have 15 wires here and do a really long one like that if you want. But since there's just 3 wires here, we're just going to need to cut 2 pieces of this hose. How long you cut these hoses, it all just depends on how far you want them spaced out. Okay, so you can cut these as long as you want, or even shorter if you want. So I'm just going to cut one more little section of hose here. I'm going to grab a zip tie. And then what we're going to do is we're going to thread all of these on to the zip tie. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come like this. We're going to put the pieces of hose that we cut in between all these wires, and we're just going to thread the other end around this first wire here, and then over top of this middle one, and then back through this second piece of hose here. And then we're going to pull that tight. And again, I like to make sure the zip tie head stays pretty close, because if you end up, say you have like 5 or 6 of these, and then the head, you end up with the head like this far away, it's really difficult to get everything nice and tight and tidy, because it's just going to be too much of the leftover zip tie on this side, and it doesn't work very well. So just make sure you keep that nice and close and pull all the slack out up here. And then before we connect it, you'll just kind of want to position it to where you want. And then we'll go ahead and run that back through there and tighten this up. Again, we'll cut this off with some flush cuts. It's nice and smooth there. And now you can see, one, it really makes these wires nice, neat, and tidy. And also, if you are worried about, because these are battery cables, so say if you had a negative battery cable right up close to a positive battery cable, I would definitely recommend doing this, because if those start to rub at all and it gets through that insulation there into itself, it's gonna make a big spark and possibly cause a fire. So definitely don't want that. So that's another nice little trick that I've learned with zip ties. One other just super simple trick that if I don't have any rubber hose laying around, what you can do kind of in the field, you can also use a zip tie as one of these rubber hoses. So I don't really need to, I'm not super concerned. This is the throttle cable here. I'm not super concerned about this here, but I'm just going to show you for an example how I do this. And I call this a handcuff zip tie. So basically, you're going to take one zip tie and you're going to put it around here, and you're going to leave it kind of loose. Then you're going to take the second zip tie and you're going to go in between the two wires that you're trying to isolate from each other. And then you're going to tighten this one, not completely tight, but pretty tight. And now you can see that the zip tie is acting as a spacer, and then you can tighten this other one, make them all nice and tight. And then you just come back again with your flush cuts. Cut those off nice and tidy. And there you go. That's another style of isolation, just another little trick in your toolbox you can use. You can also do the same thing like here where you have multiple wires with the zip tie trick. I typically like to use the hose because, one, I feel like it looks a little bit better, and also the little pieces of hose are a lot cheaper than zip ties, especially when you start to get into the more expensive zip ties. So one of the other things that I wanted to bring up is, for stuff like this, just the regular cheap plastic zip ties from Home Depot are totally fine. But if you're going to be working on something more expensive, or again, something where safety is a big concern, I strongly recommend getting these style zip ties. They're made by T&B, and essentially the difference between these is they have a metal, instead of the plastic little tang and the plastic teeth that are on the zip tie, this has a metal one, and there's not any teeth on this, so it digs into the zip tie, and it makes it infinitely adjustable, so you always get like a perfect tightness on this. Whereas the other style zip ties with the plastic little tang in there, you're dictated to the teeth that are on the zip tie, so you don't always get like a perfect tighten on this. And then plus these are just way stronger, and these will last until you cut them off. The other plastic zip ties and stuff that you get from Home Depot, especially if they're out in the sun and stuff, they'll degrade over time and they'll break on their own. So I'll put a link up to these in the video as well, so you guys can check these out if you're interested. All right, thanks guys for watching. If you liked those little tips and tricks, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, where we come out with little content like this all the time. Hopefully pretty soon we'll be filming inside the new shop instead of this, you know, beat up old garage attached to my house. So I'll see you guys in the next episode.